Are you new to self-defense, intimidated by the idea of a real street fight? Well, you're not alone. Most people freeze up because they have no idea what to do when violence hits. In this video, I'm going to train you just like a student stepping into my studio for their first lesson. These foundational CFA skills will bring order to the chaos of a real street fight, so you don't freeze, hesitate, or make a critical mistake. Let's check it out. Today, I'm going to use Tommy as a beginner student and show you in real time how I teach and correct the biggest mistakes beginners make when learning to street fight. These are the same mistakes that will get you knocked out or worse in a real street fight. Before we jump into the lesson, I want to mention that the techniques and strategies you're about to learn are covered in depth in my book, War Machine 2. Now, this is a hard-hitting 340-page book packed with cutting-edge self-defense tactics for real-world self-defense. These are battle-tested street fighting techniques designed to keep you alive when it matters most. See the link in the description down below to get your copy today. And if you prefer video instruction, I also have a full-featured training video titled Defend or Die. Now, this dives even deeper into the techniques I'm about to show you. It's available for sale on my website at sammyfranco.com. Or if you're a War Machine Elite member, you can watch it for free in the members only section of my channel. Not a member yet? Click the join button below to learn more and unlock tons of exclusive content. So one of the foundational concepts you need to learn is a stance. Many street fights, in fact, the vast majority of street fights begin in a pre-contact situation. That's when you and the individual actually have some sort of verbal engagement. So that's where a strategic stance is critical. And this is where 99.99% of the martial arts out there fail. They don't have a pre-contact self-defense stance. So we have a de-escalation stance and we also have a first strike stance. And it's the same thing except for the intent. So we have our hands up, one hand, they're staggered, elbows point down, and we're going to use our hands to gesticulate, talk to the individual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out Tommy. He's going to be a beginner student, and I'm going to critique him in real time so you could learn about the nuances and subtleties of this particular type of stance. So before he comes out, you want your feet shoulder width apart, knees bent, 50% of your weight on each leg, your body's angled, and your hands are up. You don't want it to extend it too far, and you don't want it too close to yourself. So Tommy, why don't you come out here? And I want you to, in front of the camera, to show everybody this is a beginner student demonstrating the de-escalation, the de-escalation stance. Now, in punching, kicking range, Tommy, turn sideways for me. So if we're this far from each other, you're gonna have your hands, they're gonna be staggered. Now, if we're really close, his hands are gonna be side by side. So it depends on the proximity. So in this particular case, we're at about punching, kicking distance. So Tommy, assume your de-escalation stance. So his stance, his hands are wrong, right? He wants one hand in front of the other because we're a greater distance from each other. If I encroached upon him, his hands would go more side by side. So Tommy, I'm facing you at punching, kicking range. There's his de-escalation stance. Now his hands are, and I know this seems very like I'm nitpicking, but I'm telling you, based on my experience, and I have a lot of it, if you have your hands cupped like this, or the hands are really, the fingers are peeled back, this signifies alarm, and that can actually escalate the situation and also embolden him to attack. And if you have it curved, it actually looks aggressive and perhaps even exotic to some people. So you don't want it to be some sort of exotic form of fighting. So the idea is to have your hands natural, as if you're playing patty cake. If you have a grandchild or your child, you'd be playing patty cake. So your hands are relaxed, but the hands are actually up in front of you. Now his hands are staggered, which is really important because it occupies his center line, which is really good. So if I do decide to initiate an attack, I'm not going to go through. So I'm not going to throw a straight punch. I'm going to circumvent. I'm going to throw it either over, under, around. I may even upper body tackle because we're talking about street fighting. So it's really important to get the stance down in terms of the hand positioning. So Tommy, face the camera now. So there is your stance, de-escalation. Now, does that look aggressive to you? Okay, Tommy, move to the side. Let me show them. So that's Tommy, and this is my version of it. Tommy, come back. And you, the viewer, can decide, does he look more aggressive? Does it look like he's trying to diffuse the situation? Because the idea is you don't want to inform the individual of your intentions. Okay, so he can work on having his hands a little bit more in a relaxed position. So it's not terrible, but he would have to work on it. And so if you're at home trying to develop this stance, get in front of a full-length mirror and work on de-escalating with your hands up looking like so. Tommy, one more time, come back out. And you're trying to de-escalate the situation or set up a first strike if the situation is warranted and justified. So from this reference point, you can do a lot of different techniques, offensive and defensive. We're going to talk about blocking briefly. From here, we can block high with both sides. We can block to the side, which we call a mid block, and we can block low. So this is a basic defensive structure: high, mid, and low. And off the other hand, high, mid, and low. So we're creating, again, this protective sphere. It's important to make sure that your hand, you don't want to clench your fists because it's going to retard speed and it's going to reduce the surface area. Ideally, you want to block from wrist down across the belly of the forearm. But if for some reason you misjudge it and the edge of the hand blocks, so much the better. It's either getting hit or getting the side of your hand hit. So we want basically the hand open. So we have high above your head, mid, and low. High, mid, and low. Now, when you block, you don't passively just bring your arm out. You actually engage. You're moving forward. You're going into the fire. You're arresting the force. So when it comes at you, when you high block, you don't just bring it above your head. You bring it up and you move in because you're going to engage with him. So just keep that in mind. High, high, mid, mid, low, low. This is an overhead punch defense. If he throws an overhead punch, there's your high block. If he throws a horizontal hook or a haymaker, there's your mid block. And if he decides to throw, well, in most cases, if he decides to throw like a kick or something like that, some cases, depending on a punch, it's not an uppercut. An uppercut, we would use elbow blocks, but these low blocks are seldom used. But again, it should be part of your overall defensive structure. And I'll tackle that in another video. But anyway, high, mid, and low. High, mid, and low. We're blocking with the belly of the arm. Make sure you take your hand and you're going to pronate. That's going to cause both bones to cross and it's going to improve the structural integrity of your block. So we're going to bring Tommy out. We're going to check out his blocks just like he's a beginner student learning street fighting techniques. We're going to see how he does. Tommy, come on out. Okay, so face the camera. So Tommy, what I want you to do is I want you to switch your stance to a right stance. De-escalate. Okay, move a little bit to the side for the camera so I can jump in here. So let's see your high block, okay? Show me your mid block and show me your low block. Not too bad. And again, you want to make sure the belly of the arm is blocking this lower section. And again, the most important blocks are those high blocks and those mid blocks. It doesn't mean that the low blocks aren't important, but I just want you to focus on those for right now. So Tommy, demonstrate it again. High block, other hand high block, good. Mid block, good. Mid block and low block and low block. Notice that when Tommy does his blocking, he actually looks at his hand, so he does this. You want to get in the habit of looking forward and blocking so you're comfortable with it. So sometimes you may look to check on the position of your arm, which is fine, but if you have a mirror, you don't need to actually look at it. But this is something that beginners always do. They'll block and they'll actually look at it from this perspective. You don't need to do that. You shouldn't do that in a self-defense situation. Tommy, one more time. So high block, good. Mid block and low block, good. And the other hand, high block and mid block and low block. Okay, very good. So one thing I want to point out is that there's also something called the height and width fluctuation. So depending on the blow, how it's coming at you, you will have this height fluctuation. And also how tight it is, the arc of the attack, you're going to have that width fluctuation. So again, these are things that are relative to the attack. Tommy, one more time. Show them a good de-escalation or first strike stance. It's a nice and relaxed fingers. We don't want to claw it. So let's show the high block and the mid block and the low block. And then the other hand, high block and the mid block and the low block. Not bad. So again, it's not perfect. It's not sexy. It's not something that I would publish in a book. But it's a beginner. He's starting off as a beginner. He's learning the foundational movements, and that's how you should start off. Your best tool to develop these skills is a full-length mirror and a very critical eye. Hey, we're about to get back into the video, but let me ask you something. Do you want to legitimately accelerate your self-defense skills? And are you sick of clickbait videos teaching absolute garbage? Or tired of being misled by unqualified, wannabe experts who have zero credibility or experience? If the answer is yes, now is the time to join my War Machine memberships. As a member, you're going to get exclusive access to in-depth training videos, exclusive full-feature video content, downloadable training PDFs, and direct insights you're not going to find anywhere else. Plus, you're going to have direct access to me in the comments section of all my videos. So if you have questions, you're going to get real, detailed answers from me and not some random keyboard warrior. So if you're serious about mastering real-world combat skills, hit the join button below and start training like a true war machine. Now, let's get back to the lesson. So we have the stance and we have a protective structure with the blocking. What about linear punches? Well, in this stance, generally people aren't going to punch the palms of your hand because you're occupying the center line. However, things happen in a street fight. Everything's unpredictable in a street fight, and sometimes your hands may open. It's alive, it's dynamic. So if he decides to throw a linear shot at you, we have parries. And a parry is a quick, forceful slap that redirects a linear shot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically deflect it offline. So we're gonna parry with the lead hand or parry with the rear hand. We always do mirror image parrying and blocking. So if someone throws an attack on this side, I never cross block and I never cross parry. I always match the arm with the side it's coming at. So a lead horizontal parry and a rear horizontal parry. We also have a lead vertical parry and a rear vertical parry, depending if he decides to throw linear shots. But remember, this is not a sparring match. We're into street fighting, we're into reality-based self-defense, so your techniques have to replicate real-world self-defense techniques. They have to be efficient, effective, and safe. So we have horizontal parry and a vertical parry. Tommy, why don't you come out? Face the camera. So let's demonstrate a lead horizontal parry, good, and a rear horizontal parry. And again, you're just deflecting it off its line of attack. You don't push it, it's just a real quick snap and it throws it offline. And again, it's very efficient. So Tommy, one more time, lead horizontal and a rear horizontal and a lead vertical and a rear vertical, right? Next, we're gonna show you some of these blocks in action. So Tommy's gonna assume a de-escalation stance or a first strike stance, depending on his intent and the use of force justification. So he has his hands up. I'm gonna swing overhead, he's gonna high block, mid block, mid block. I'm telling you guys, it is excruciating. I have pads on and those blocks are so destructive. And again, he's just doing the basic blocks. He's not engaging. He's not trying to actually arrest it at its root. He's just getting the foundational elements. Again, this video is about beginner techniques for street fighting. So again, his hands are up, high, mid, mid. If I threw low uppercuts, he would use elbow blocking. And again, we're gonna cover that in another video. Hands back up, Tommy. Now I'm gonna critique some of the mistakes so you can avoid this when you're training on your own. When Tommy's blocking, he often looks at the block. This, I've taught thousands of students and they all do this. And it's not, they don't suck, it's just a natural thing that beginners do. You do not wanna do that. You wanna let your peripheral vision see what's going on. Focus on the throat triangle area and let your vision diffuse. So he's blocking just as effectively without looking at my hands. This is, I know it seems like it's very minor, it's huge. It's a really important thing to really nail down when you're training for when you're training for this type of scenario or situation. Hands up, high, mid, mid. Hands come back to the reference point, good, and relax. And what happens when you do this drill is they get real tense, the shoulders come up. It's natural, it's normal in the beginning. When you become a seasoned fighter, you're gonna be relaxed. You're gonna block and come back, because you're gonna have so much confidence because you've done it so many times. Again, the repetition is the mother of skill, and this type of drill will do just that. Here we go. Good. And you can mix it up. It doesn't have to be sequential. I can come here, here. And again, this is not a live training, right? You guys have seen my videos where we put on gear and they go at it. This is beginner level stuff. So you've got, again, it's just baby steps. And then you get yourself up to that point where you can really deal with the volatile nature and the aggression, the adrenaline dumps. All of that comes into play, but right now we're building a foundation. Hands up, Good, excellent. Again. And if I threw that straight punch, he would parry and parry. Again, parry and parry. We can add it together. High, mid, parry, and parry. Now, one thing about the parry that he's doing, he's actually pushing it instead of just deflecting it. And that happens when you build up the intensity. Again, the more intensity you have in a drill, it starts to get sloppy. And that's the reality of street fighting. It's not this pristine, beautiful technique that you see in movies or in these demonstrations on some of these other videos. It's real world training. Now let's talk about what he might do to you in the course of a pre-contact situation. Tommy, so if I'm de-escalating, come a little closer, good. So if I'm de-escalating the situation, Tommy decides he's not gonna throw a punch, he's gonna grab my wrist. And this happens actually when I used to work as a bouncer. Lots of times when I de-escalate, they would just grab either one or two hands. So I'm gonna show you a basic escape from a two-hand wrist grab. Now, I'm not suggesting you give him your hand so he grabs you, right? I'm just saying this could happen, and it's important from this reference point that you have all your bases covered. High blocks, mid blocks, you have your low blocks, you have your parries. So if Tommy decides right here to grab both wrists, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep this front hand stable, I'm gonna take this back hand, and I'm gonna move it in a circular motion over the front. It's gonna go over, and I'm gonna take this hand, this back hand, and I'm gonna strip it back. And now, Tommy, hold this position, just turn this to the camera. So now I am trapping him, okay? And from here, I'm able to strike. So again, this is the reference point. Back up a little bit, Tommy. You're gonna reach out and you're gonna grab, up and over. I strip, I grab, I'm trapping him now. And when I hit him, I don't passively hit him. What I do is I pull him into the strike. This amplifies the damage. You could palm heel, do a lot of different techniques. It all depends on the angle of the range and the use of force justification. So let's see how a beginner would do in this situation. Tommy's hands are up, he's de-escalating. The punching kicking range, I'm gonna reach up, I'm gonna grab both wrists. Let me see the technique, up and over, he strips it, and then he hits. Good, that's not bad. The only problem is Tommy actually was passive with the way he actually held my arm. When he threw the strike, he should have pulled me into it. So what he does is he pulls in, this shoulder goes back as he simultaneously delivers the shot. So it's really important that you actually pull him into the shot. It amplifies the damage, believe me, I know, it amplifies it. So again, hands up, he's de-escalating. We're talking, he's trying to diffuse the situation. I'm escalating, I'm showing intent. I come and I grab, his hand goes up and over, and he strikes. Not bad, try one more time. Good. Again, what he's doing is, grab me, Tommy, he comes over here and he's tightening up here. He needs to learn how to be relaxed. So once he comes in here, he has this position, he pulls and he strikes. Much more relaxed, because relaxation enhances speed. Tensing up is gonna slow you down and be telegraphic. Besides a two-hand wrist grab, he can grab individual hands. So, Tommy, I'm diffusing the situation or setting up my first strike. He grabs one hand. Now, instead of utilizing a very complicated technique that you might see in martial arts schools, which look really cool and fancy and will never pull off in a real fight, I'm gonna teach you something that's simple and effective. I'm de-escalating, he grabs the hand, I simply strike right here. Let him have this hand, I don't care. He can hold it all day long if he wants, but I'm gonna give him something in return, and there's that palm heel strike. This is just one possible strike. There's a multitude of different techniques that you can apply, and again, it depends on the angle of the range and the use of force justification. Tommy, if he grabs my other hand, same thing, I strike with the free hand. Striking with the free hand is so simple, it's efficient, effective, and safe. So we covered a variety of different techniques from this reference point. What else can he do to attack? He can do something called a hand peel back, where he actually grabs the front of our hand and he peels it downward. Now this is done to open up your center line, throw you off balance, and so he could throw a strike. Tommy's gonna come in here, and we're gonna have Tommy demonstrate what he thinks would be the right way to respond, and then I'm gonna critique it and show you the right way to do this in a street fight. Tommy's gonna de-escalate. I'm the bad guy, I'm gonna do the hand peel back, and I'm just gonna bring it downward. His counter is gonna be a straight punch. So the trajectory of this backhand is linear, but I'm bending his body diagonally down. If he throws this technique, he's not gonna maximize the power. And in a street fight, you need to maximize power, because this is not a situation where you're fighting somebody with the same body weight or somebody in a ring or an octagon. This person can be twice your size, twice as aggressive. He could be fueled by rage. He could be fueled by psychoactive drugs. So we need maximum firepower. Here's the right way to do it. Tommy, back up a little bit. I'm de-escalating. He decides to do the peel back, and as he's bringing it diagonally down, I'm going to step in with a diagonal elbow. Notice how I'm going with the body mechanic of the pulling. So I'm stepping in, I'm executing a rear diagonal elbow to him. This is actually going with the direction of the force, the direction of the energy, and it maximizes the impact power in a street fight. So we talked about blocks, we've talked about parries, and we've talked about wrist grabs. Again, it's all working from this reference point, this first strike or de-escalation stance during the pre-contact stage of a self-defense situation. So what are other things that can happen? Well, he could tackle you. Now, in reality-based self-defense, there's basically 3 height levels that he can attack you on or charge you at. He can do an upper body tackle, such as a bum's rush. He can do a mid body tackle or a lower body tackle. And the lower body tackle is very common in the MMA and Brazilian schools and whatnot. So just for right now, we're gonna focus on the upper body tackle from this reference point, because again, we're trying to create an entire defensive structure from here in case he throws anything at you, be it a punch or a tackle. So Tommy's gonna back up a little bit. I'm gonna de-escalate the situation, try to diffuse it, or set up a first strike if it's legal and morally justified. From this reference point, when he decides to do an upper body tackle, I execute a stiff arm jam. And what I'm doing is I'm jamming him right at the chest point, the upper pec region. This negates his energy just for a split second. And once that energy is negated, I engage the clinch. So again, one more time, he executes it, I stiff arm jam, and I engage the clinch. Very, very important technique that helps negate that energy so you don't get tackled and thrown onto the floor. Just remember, it works from this reference point. That's a wrap up for today's training. Remember, knowing is not enough. You have to train these skills until they become second nature. Stay sharp, stay ready, and I'll see you at the next video.